Welcome to the Financial Advisor Success Podcast, where you go behind the scenes with financial planner, speaker, and consultant Michael Kitces to hear stories of how leading financial advisors navigated the inevitable challenges that arise on the path to success, and get insight from leading industry consultants about how to break through to the next level in your advisory business. And now here's your host, Michael Kitces.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the 415th episode of the Financial Advisor Success Podcast. My guest on today's podcast is Erika Wood. Erika is the Director of Wealth Management for VisionPoint Advisory Group, a hybrid advisory firm based in Dallas, Texas, that oversees approximately $3 billion in assets under advisement for both 780 client households and 4 retirement plans. What's unique about Erika, though, is how her firm leverages centralized financial planning and service teams, along with the ticketing workflow system, to systematize the firm-wide planning process to more efficiently serve its 600 million AUM of private wealth clients. In this episode, we talk in depth about how Erika's firm uses an internal meeting preparation team to support their client-facing advisors, both by preparing financial plans in the firm's planning software and by providing their advisors with a pre-meeting worksheet with all the information they need to run the meeting. How Erika's firm is able to more efficiently complete tasks by dividing its client service team by functional specialty rather than just assigning client service team members to particular advisors. And how Erika's firm is using a ticketing system within its CRM with required fields their advisors must fill out to ensure that every task is completed efficiently and correctly. We also talk about how Erika's firm divides its client segments: private wealth clients, e-wealth clients, and foundational clients, based on their investable assets as well as the complexity of their planning needs. How Erika's firm uses a data-centric approach to set fees, first determining the cost of serving each client segment, including estimated hours it'll take to serve them and each advisor's hourly rate, and then adding a buffer on top to ensure each client really can be served profitably. And why Erika's firm uses a quarterly client service calendar approach with its top-tier clients, with each quarterly meeting covering a different planning topic and then scheduling them based on where the topic most appropriately fits during the year. And be certain to listen to the end, where Erika shares how her firm builds client loyalty through regular webinars on relevant planning topics, in-person social events, and client appreciation gifts. Why Erika decided to leave her previous broker-dealer, which 3 generations of her family had worked with, to have more flexibility in how she conducts planning and communicates with clients. And why Erika recommends that newer advisors find the part of the planning profession that speaks to them rather than being pigeonholed into a certain path, and focus on getting better there to make the most of their individual strengths. And so with that introduction, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Financial Advisor Success Podcast with Erika Wood. Welcome, Erika Wood, to the Financial Advisor Success Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you joining us today and an opportunity to get to dig in, nerd out a little bit on financial planning process, like how we really start to systematize a planning process. I find this kind of comes in stages for advisory firms where first we're out on our own and we're doing whatever we can for whatever clients we serve and trying to get paid for it. And as you start doing it for multiple clients, you go, we should probably systematize this. It might be a little bit easier to do it repeatably. But as firms grow, and especially once they go multi-advisor, I find there's just a whole other level of complexity that comes with how do we as a firm have a more standardized planning process and how do you get everyone on board with it, and how do you get the right tech and systems in place, and how do you get the whole team to actually do all the things that it takes to do this standard process across all the people in the firm. And I know you have been going down this road over the past several years of building out a more systematized process in a multi-advisor or multi-location firm. And so I'm just excited to both, I think, nerd out on the planning process itself. Just what do you do? What have you built? And I suppose the secondary dynamics that go with how do you actually get everyone on board and enshrine this into tech and enshrine this into the systems to really actually run more consistently across the firm.
Yeah, it's not easy, but it's worth it.
I think before we dig into just some of the discussion of planning process, what have you built? How do you serve clients? Just tell us a little bit about the advisory firm overall as it exists today, just so we have some context as we get further into what you actually are doing for clients.
Yeah, so we are in 6 different states, and then also some others, people work from home, but we have offices in 6 different states. And we've got teams. So we used to be regional, and now we are all one team with different roles. So the benefit of that is that everyone's kind of working to those strengths. You've got a dedicated planning team, you've got a dedicated service team, you've got leadership, you've got advisors with varying levels of expertise and experience. We didn't want to start from scratch with all new people. We want to use the great people that we have in kind of a system that is different to everyone, a little bit foreign. But something they can grow in and have a career trajectory in. But to get everyone on the same page as far as here's a process, we follow it. I think it starts with the why. Really it starts with the what are we, who are we serving, why are we doing it? And once everyone understands that, it becomes a whole lot easier to share in this mission of we want to serve our clients, we want them to have a consistent experience, we want to be able to grow and scale with our clients, be really referable. So how do we build the systems to get to that point, essentially?
And how many people are in the firm overall across six office locations and multiple teams?
So we have 35 people.
And how many clients is it that the firm serves?
We have about 1,400 individual clients. That's not households. That is individuals.
Okay.
And really kind of we segment them. So that is one of the very intentional pieces of the business is how do we segment our clients? What do we offer them? And what should we be offering our various clients with different needs and circumstances in their lives?
And so I want to come back and understand a little bit more of the segmentation, but first, just to understand overall scope, can I ask like what revenue is or assets under management are for the firm, however you measure?
Yeah, so we do measure. We've got private client assets under management of just over 600 million.
Okay.
Households wise, it's about the 780, so roughly half of those individuals. The revenue last year was 8.8 million and projected this year to be over 11. So we've had some really nice growth and also evidence that the process, while always being refined and improved
Uh-huh.
upon, it's working. It's working really well.
So if about half the clients are private client, what's the other half?
So we do have a significant retirement solutions business.
Okay.
So that's going to be 401k plans and then deferred comp. Um, and that's pretty, brokerage business is very minimal for us, but I
Okay.
would say the whole assets under advisement, that would be kind of separating out the 401k. There's 338 assets, there's 321 assets. Assets under advisement for the whole firm is really close to the 3 billion mark.
Okay. Okay. So and so then likewise, I can see now, so clients are split between the clients you've got on the private client side and then the clients you've got on the retirement solution side, either plan participants or executives and leadership you're doing deferred comp and other offerings for.
Exactly. Yep. And no one's in competition, which is the beauty of the whole thing. We're all for one for all. We complement it nicely. If there's an opportunity on the retirement plan side to do private wealth client planning, then it's an easy referral from the team member and consistent experience for that client because we understand their group benefits innately. We put them in place, and then we can help them on their personal planning side as well.
So now help me understand the segmentation. You said you were very intentional about segmentation of clients. So like what does that mean? How does that work in your firm?
So I hound on this all the time. It always starts and we do a fit meeting. So we're not trying to appeal to everyone. We are very specific in who our ideal client is and what we offer them. Is it a good fit or not? It always starts with what are their needs. So in that fit meeting, we're discovering how complex is their plan or their needs. How what kinds of scenarios would be required in this planning? How complex is it overall? So it starts with what level of planning will they need, and also can they afford it? So at the end of the day, there are planning fees that they're going to need to be able to afford in the
Mhm.
process as well. Um, so starting with the need and then going from there, we're not just simply looking to gather assets and say you're at $1 million, so this is what you're going to get from us. That's We've tried that in the old days. Doesn't work as well because come to find out, just because someone has a certain balance sheet does not really tell us what kind of planning they need. So we like to start, it's needs-based, figuring out what kind of planning, and then we go from there. So we segment based on the planning type, and sometimes there are clients that we are just investment management. It's not something we focus on or even prospect necessarily, but we do have that option for people that might just say, you guys do a really great job with investment management, please just do that piece for now. So it's broken into those planning, investment only, and then we do have some insurance only clients that I will call legacy clients. They might have been policies we wrote long ago and we kept the relationship. So also not something we prospect, but we have a really robust insurance team that can help service that.
Are there segments within what it means to be a planning client, or like segments of planning, or is your primary segmentation by the service offering itself, like planning only, planning and investments, investment only, insurance only, like across the verticals?
It's the two sides. So it is the type of planning. And then if there are assets to manage, we will give it an A category, A, double A, triple A, just to help. And also figure out if we're charging X fee on these assets and planning costs Y, is that matching up? Is it enough to cover the planning? Is it not? Do they owe some out of pocket because of that? So that's kind of factored into the equation. Is at the end of the day, we look at it as this plan costs this much to run start to finish with a client. Here's what kind of revenue we'll need to generate to make that make sense.
So what are the actual segments? Like, how do you characterize them or tier them or quantify them?
Yeah, so we call them private wealth clients. And that's going to be the segment that's higher net worth, more complex planning needs. We meet with them more frequently. We talk to their outside advisors like attorneys and accountants. That's the most comprehensive, holistic, cash flow planning, just really getting in the weeds and the
Okay.
details on their needs. Below that is e-wealth, and the way it's been designed is that you can graduate from, and hopefully do, from e-wealth to private wealth. So e-wealth is fewer meetings, but still comprehensive planning. It's more online based. The take homes are electronic. So it's meant to be a streamlined version for, I would really characterize those clients as, younger families, good income, good savers. They will be private wealth one day. They're just not there yet. And then I would say one other tier, our foundational level clients are a lot of times those private wealth clients' children. So that way we can still do good planning for them. We love family financial planning. So we really want to embrace the whole family. There's a lot of complexities and dynamics with that. And so we wanted to have an offering for them too that they could grow with us.
And so is pricing different by tier? Like, are there different minimums or just outright different fee levels? How does it work between the three?
Yep. And so that's what we took a pen to paper. We figured out, okay, each team member here at the firm there's compensation and benefits. So we got to figure out their hourly rate and figure out how much time they're spending on each step of the process. And you kind of run it through the machine, and here's what that fee is going to be, or what the revenue that needs to be generated from the client. So we do have tiers, the foundational planning fee versus the e-wealth and the private wealth. They each kind of start small and get the increase from there.
So can you give me a sense as to what those fees are? Like, what have you found that works? What does it take in your practice to make the math work?
Yeah, so foundational plan, and this has been a trial and error. We've learned as we went. 2,500 per year would be foundational planning.
Okay.
7,500 per year for e-wealth, and at least 10,000 for private wealth. And then I guess another planning type I forgot to mention is our business owner exit planning, and that
Okay.
is going to be 12,000 and up. I'd say more commonly it's about 25,000. Just it depends on how their business looks and what their needs are. That's a very intensive process, but once
Okay.
again, it is a process. So follow the playbook on it. But yes, I would say those are all those fees I just said would have been unfathomable to me in the past, that
Mhm.
you could ever tell someone they'd have to pay this to work with you and they would do it. And I've even just recently we had someone tell us they were surprised that our fees weren't higher. So maybe we need to raise our fees.
Apparently, nice problem to have. So as you set these fees, are these are these flat fees? Are these like AUM, but this is the minimum? Like how do you actually price this in your firm?
Yep, that's right. It's AUM. There's an advisory fee that we charge, and then we figure out if there's are we meeting that minimum revenue amount or not for the planning fee cost. So if somebody has $2 million and we're charging them 75 basis points, and their situation necessitates private wealth planning, then that's a private wealth client, and they wouldn't have to owe anything out of pocket because of the advisory fees.
But if I'm a private wealth client and I'm only at $500,000, so my AUM fee is only going to be a fraction of what it takes to get to the $10,000 minimum, then I'm going to have some additional planning fee that I've got to pay to get me up to the $10,000 minimum to be private wealth.
Yep. And assuming because that is their need, they'd be able to afford it. If they couldn't
Mhm.
afford it, then private wealth probably isn't the planning that they
Right.
needed in the first place.
And I'm wondering, like mechanically, how do you do it? Like do you get to the end of the year and like bill them for $10,000 minus actual AUM fees equals like the balance that you owe? Do you like break it up for them quarterly or monthly through the year? Like how do you actually true this up?
Yeah, we do. So after the FIT meeting and we're kind of getting the onboarding going, we do send them a financial planning agreement with the calculated fee that they might owe out of pocket. And then we give them the option. They can pay it monthly, quarterly, all at once within the compliance rules that the plan has to be done in a certain amount of time. But for the most part, people are paying quarterly, I think is the most common
Okay.
frequency.
But the planning agreement essentially says if we work with you, it costs $10,000. If you place assets with us, it'll offset this. If you place enough assets with us, you won't owe a separate fee. Otherwise,
Right.
we're gonna bill you for what you'll owe.
Yep, that's right. And that's something that's discussed. So there's the FIT meeting. We follow up with them afterwards with an invoice, not an invoice. We follow up afterwards with a quote
Okay.
to say, here's the complexity of your needs or not. And here's what we see, kind of like a contractor coming to your house. They're not on the spot telling you how much a remodel is going to cost. That's kind
Right.
of the mentality we've adopted here is we want to be able to take it to the team, discuss it as a team. I have stories about how that did not work in the past when people were quoting things they were undercharging,
Hmm.
let's just say, and the planning team was raising their hand to say, hey, this is going to cost more than that. So we have a collaboration afterwards to figure out what those costs will be, bring it back to the client, and they know and we're telling them if they're a good fit for us. They're hopefully saying if it is a good fit that they want to work with us too, and we've told them what the fee is right away. So there's no follow up needed. It's they're going to pay
Right.
at that time, and we get the planning process going.
So if I'm understanding, there's still some like time and complexity estimate for any and every client. It's not just that every private wealth client has a $10,000 minimum. If you're complex and have a lot of stuff going on, your fee could be higher than that.
Yes,
Is that
yes, that
correct?
is true. Yeah, and that's where we get into the advisory fee is usually covering it at that point, especially when there's custom
Okay.
portfolio management, for example. There's just an
Okay.
inherent cost, and
Yep.
as that net worth ticks up, that the
Okay.
advisory fee would cover pretty much.
So you could have a higher planning fee, but usually you end out with clients that have higher assets at that point as well. So it's kind of a moot point because they generally have enough assets to cover it from an AUM fee.
Exactly.
Okay. And then how did you figure out, I guess just the rates you needed to set at these minimums in the first place? I mean, you said like looking at all the team members and what they spend on each step of the process and what their hourly rate is, but like it's a messy thing to like actually try to figure out. So how did you go about it to really try to set how much time does each person spend in the process? What is the hourly rate of every team member? How did that
Yeah.
work?
It yeah, try getting people to want to log hours or whatever it counts
Uh-huh.
to. Yeah, no one wants to do that. So I will say it's an estimate, and I think our leader, he started the firm years ago, Jim Mars. He said from the beginning, you're always going to forget about those different hours and phone calls and emails, and that you're going to end up on undercharging. So always buffer in a profit in there because you're going to you're basically going to undercharge. So we do have a very complex spreadsheet that has all of the team members' names and their hourly rate and about how much time they spend. And we're looking at it on an annual basis. So we're not just talking about the initial onboarding. It is the client touches, the cards, the holiday gifts, the review meetings. It's all the times we might interact with that client in a given year, and come with a really best estimate of what that would cost. So it is not perfect, but it's a lot better than just shooting from the hip and guessing, or trying to just match what other advisors are doing. I think if you want to look at it from a business standpoint, you want to, look at it from a mathematical equation to make sure that you're coming out okay on it.
And are you trying to like literally do this by client per client, or just in the aggregate? Like Betty spends about 3/4 of her time on planning things. So that's 1,500 hours a year, and we're adding that into the total fee of clients to figure out what a minimum is. Like, is it aggregated like that, or are you actually trying to go like team member by team member for their time, and like client by client for how much was spent on each of those clients?
Yeah, I will say this is not something we're doing frequently. So it was
Okay.
kind of a set it and forget it in a way, unless there's been a drastic change to
Okay.
something. And the other thing is, there are private wealth level clients that don't want to see us that often, and that's
Right.
fine. So I'm not going to shove that down their throats if they don't want to meet quarterly. That's fine too. So then, do we charge them differently? We don't. We could overcomplicate this
Well,
all day
yeah,
long.
well, that's why I'm wondering. Like, it's a fine balancing point between we can measure this in the aggregate for the firm and get close and be off for some clients, or we can drill it all the way down to the client level and be really on target for the clients. And we may spend so much time tracking at that level of detail that's actually more expensive than having just estimated
Yeah,
it.
yeah, we don't want to cut off our nose to spite our face. So yeah, and the other thing is, what isn't really factored into that equation is what happens when our planning software is increasing their rates by 5%.
Hmm.
That stuff like that happens all the time. So you don't want to set it and forget it to the point of now we're losing money, but at the same time, it's something that we keep up with, and it's just kind of to come up with a general parameter of here's the minimum revenue that this should produce.
And as you rolled this out, did you then have existing clients you had to fix who were not on target in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fine line. There's certain relationships that, you're going to offer them what their needs have been, and maybe no more, and that's okay. And then there's other clients that we rolled this out actually prior to joining our current firm, and sat down with every single client to say, now we are looking at planning differently. It is fee based. Here's exactly what you're going to get. Here's when we're going to meet, just outlining it more organized than we ever had before. And we had several people say, this is so great. I love that you're doing this. This is kind of what I wished for all along. So that was good feedback that, hey, there was probably, we were doing it our way for so long that rolling it out in a more systematic way was something that they wanted too. So that strengthened the relationship, and they were open to, hey, whatever it takes, this is what I want. So you tell me.
And as you were going down this road, I think you said your owner likes to, or like recommends put in a buffer, because if we're trying to guesstimate our hours, we just tend to sort of systematically do that. We forget the one-off things that we had that add up. So do you know, is there a set buffer that was added in? I mean, like, did you take all the times and just arbitrarily mark them up 10% or 25%, or something to that effect to try to dial into an appropriate minimum number?
Yeah, for sure. And to make it just easy, 10,000 for planning. If it was right around there, it's just an easy number. So yes, there's always a little bit of a markup, because it turns out he was right. There, there are all those things you forget about that take up your day to day that you
Yeah.
got to price in.
So do you know, like, how much did you have to adjust it up to make sure that it actually trued up? I mean, where it's like a 10% adjustment, or is it like a 40% adjustment because we underestimate that much?
It was more like it was on the lower end,
Okay.
just because there's also the idea that, again, kind of fear factor. I'm going to have to tell a client that I'm charging them, which It's so silly that I even said that, because there's industries that have been doing that since the beginning of time, and
Mhm.
there's no problem with it. So why are we afraid of it? But you want it to be reasonable. It needs. The other thing is we are in multi-state, so there are some markets that planning fees need to be more palatable, or maybe in line with the cost of living, than others. So there's kind of an art to it too, that we want it to be consistent throughout the firm, but we want flexibility that you can still be competitive where your clients are.
So, so I think you had said when you were kind of going through this exercise to determine the actual cost to service an average client and figure out where the fee minimums needed to be, that when you brought this out to clients, you were also highlighting like an updated planning process of, well, just to be clear, here's what we're going to be doing for you going forward. Like, look at all the things that we do. Uh, so can you walk us through a little bit more? Like what's on that list? Like what is the ongoing client service, I guess, like service model or structure or deliverables? Like what did you articulate to say, here's what we do for you on an ongoing basis for the fees that we charge?
Yeah, so in that meeting with whoever you're with, you have an idea of their situation. So that kind of colors the next steps. So what are the offerings? If it's private wealth and it's more complex, then we can be very specific that each quarter when you hear from us, there's a different agenda, and it is specific. So that way we know we're touching all of the highlights of financial planning, and we're also going deep when we need to. So Q1, we're going to talk about your goal planning and your cash flow from last year. And in Q2, we're going to look at your estate documents. Even though we did it last year, we're going to talk about your insurance and your risk management. In Q3, we're going to go into your tax strategy and talk to your CPA and make sure that we're set for year-end tax planning. And then Q4, a deep dive on the portfolio. So that way we can see if we need to make some changes to it, talk about how the market played out for the year, gain situation, and things like that. So they see it outlined. Okay, sounds great. You're going to hit all the spots. And then those one-off events, I'm retiring, or I need you to meet with my kids so we can discuss our plans with them, or I want to be more charitable. So we've got the one-off
Sure.
non-regular meetings as well.
Interesting. But the standard cadence for you is with private wealth clients, it's a quarterly structure, if I'm hearing right. So Q1 goal planning, Q2 insurance and estate, Q3 tax, Q4 portfolio review.
Yep. Yep. And
And
we were
so,
intentional with the timing too. Found that when you do more broad, general financial planning at the beginning of the year, it gets the software cleaned up for the rest of the year. So you're not playing cleanup every time you sit down with them.
and is each of these a meeting? Are you aiming for quarterly meetings, or is this simply the quarterly work you're doing, but it might be behind the scenes and may or may not merit a meeting?
It is a meeting. And I was surprised at some people, a lot of people that we used to meet with less frequently, especially at that level, that were open to it. And actually, they enjoy it. They don't miss it. Now, it's not to say we have perfect attendance from all clients, but um, yeah, it's sitting down often face to face. And then, of course, there's Zoom, but that's the agenda. And that's what we talk about at each of those points.
Interesting. So you found clients were more willing to meet more regularly when you had like a structured service calendar, like a structured agenda of what we're actually going to cover in each meeting.
Yes. For sure. Otherwise, they're like, you again? Just tell me if anything's wrong, which there are still
Right.
people like that.
I'll call you if anything's coming up in my life. You call me if there's anything going on that I should know about. And other than that, like, I don't know why we need to meet.
Yeah. So we did. And again, we have a lot of advisors and they have different levels of how they're used to doing things. So we need to consider that too. And there is kind of a streamlined version of it where it's twice a year and it's combining Q1, Q2 and combining Q3 and Q4. So that way we're still talking about it, but meeting less frequently because, again, don't want to force it on a client that's not interested in that.
I was going to ask as well, just you have your tiers. So is it the same quarterly cadence with e-wealth clients as it is with private wealth clients?
No, it is semi-annual. So it's
Okay.
the combination of the 2 quarters for eWealth
So
clients.
so
Yeah.
goals, insurance, estate grouped together in the first half and tax and portfolio grouped together in the second half of the year.
Yeah. And it makes our meeting prep team's lives easier too. That they're kind of in the mode of, this is what I'm prepping for these meetings. It's the same thing for this quarter or this semi-annual period, where they're used to looking up the same things, running the same reports, and that kind of thing.
Well, I was gonna ask on that end how systematized it is across the practice. Like, is it really like everyone in the practice, like every private wealth client in the practice, aside from the few that just don't want to meet, but like every private wealth client in the practice gets the goal planning, cash flow discussion in Q1, the insurance estate review in Q2?
Yeah, pretty much. I will say you get those clients that maybe they cancel or reschedule, and now, shoot, we're in Q2, it's not Q1 anymore. Now, what do
Uh-huh.
we do? It can get messy. So, in our ticketing system, which we haven't even gotten to yet, but you can choose the meeting type in the ticketing system to say, I understand the guidelines of what each quarter should be, but this client just really needs to talk about taxes and it's Q2. So I'm going to choose a tax strategy meeting, and the team will accommodate that. So we wanted flexibility in a very systematized world.
I mean, I can envision there's multiple scenarios. There's the client who just, we couldn't get them in for their tax meeting in Q3. Now it's Q4. Can we still do the tax meeting in October? And the answer is like, yes, you can just tell the team, like, we're prepping for a tax meeting. They can handle it as a one-off. Or clients who just have their own life and stuff going on and don't their circumstances don't adhere to our like wonderfully structured client service calendar, even though their lives are clearly supposed to conform to our structure. But
Mm-hmm.
their
Always.
if their lives fail to conform to our structure, you'll still accommodate and take those when they come up.
For sure. And I'll also kindly at our next meeting say, you know what? I think every 6 months is going to be perfect for your situation, and they're more than happy to say it because there's a reason they've been pushing it off.
How often do exceptions come up? How often do they just kind of fit the system that's in front of them? I mean, I can tell the story. The system is so structured that there's really not a lot of one-off things that happen because you're already covering it pretty regularly every year. But clients are going to client, so they still
Exactly.
don't always conform to our systems. So how, just in practice, how often do you find the structured quarterly process works versus clients pull you outside the standard because clients are going to client?
More often they adhere to it. When they don't, it's the same people. So,
Okay, so you've got like a
you know your
subset of
clients.
rule breakers who, well, not
Yeah,
client, like the people that just like to do things with their march to their own drummer and
yeah.
do
And
their own thing.
if they're a good fit in other ways, then we keep them
Hmm.
around, and we have good relationships. So we're not looking to be so strict that we're going to offboard someone for not having our quarterly meeting. But that being said, it does make everything easier, and frankly, their financial planning is a lot stronger when we're talking about all the things. So it's a push and pull a little bit, but most people, they stick to it, and they get a lot out of it. And that doesn't mean it's an hour and a half long quarterly meeting. There are some that are very
Right.
fast. It's just touching base. It's not a lot has gone on, and that's perfectly fine too. So it's also that FaceTime and building that relationship.
And did you say, I thought I heard that part of this in execution for you, there's a meeting prep team who helps everybody get ready for these. So what is that team? What is that structure? How does that work?
So it's part service people and part financial planning team. What we were finding with such a prescribed meeting frequency was there's prep involved that takes a lot of time. And advisors don't
Yep.
necessarily want to sit down, open the planning software, clean up connections that are broken, whatever the case might be. There's a lot of stuff that can be done by many people. So
Yep.
we wanted to capitalize on that and say, okay, if you know this meeting is coming up and you're managing the relationship with the client, then you can submit a ticket. We do have a minimum client level. It has to be a double A client and up, which is about 750,000 AUM, um, to be able to do the prep. So if it's going to be a smaller client than that, you're going to have to do the prep yourself because we only have so many people. So they can submit this ticket, and what that team will do is prep the agenda. They will prep what I've coined a pre-meeting worksheet. So it is specific to the meeting type, where it's kind of a guide for that team member to go into the plan, document what they see. You think of a doctor going in with a patient, they've already gotten prepped by the nurse beforehand. We really wanted to emulate that and say, the prep for you is very minimal. You can still go into the meeting, still do great work, but a lot of that underlying stuff has already been accomplished for you.
So help me understand more of what the pre-meeting worksheet is.
Yeah, so let's say it's the goal planning meeting in Q1 or whenever it happens. There's a checklist of here's the things to look for in the plan. Here's the things to possibly clean up. Here, maybe there's a section where you put down that there's some opportunities like, gosh, you're sitting on an awful lot of cash, or whatever the case might be. They're close to Medicare age. There's certain things that they check off, and then it's specific to each quarter. So the estate and insurance one is going to be all about policy review, beneficiaries, estate planning documents, and so on. So it is specific to the quarter,
Okay.
but it's a high level view. And then the
So
advisor has their own checklist too, so they have to be able to, do the advisor things.
I was going to say, so that this isn't a checklist that the advisor is going through. This is a checklist that the prep team is going through to like prompt the advisor. Hey, they've got lots of cash. Make sure you ask about that. Hey, they're getting close to Medicare age. Like, make sure you bring that up.
Yeah, it's actually both, because there were parts
Okay.
that the planning team, especially if they don't know the client, there's just things that it'll be easier for the advisor to know or ask about. Um, but yes, it is, most of that work is done by that planning team member.
And where did these like worksheets, checklists come from?
I just made them.
Okay. So you built them and iterated on them over time internally.
Yep. And it's also a way to add in. So if you're trying to think of like a big team of people at an RIA and you're trying to get everyone to do things the same way, and it's really difficult to do, the pre-meeting worksheet is actually a great way to implement things that become top of mind because it's part of the process. And I can get into like the whole process of the meeting scheduling, and that leads to this pre-meeting worksheet where the meeting is actually set and we're getting ready for it. But it's a great way to put something on there if I want to make a quick edit, that if someone wants all the support that we can offer them, they're going to follow this process. And then they're going to see at the top of this pre-meeting worksheet, hey, there's this thing to think about. Maybe it's a legislative change. I don't know. If something that we want to get out there and be top of mind, that's a great way to do it.
So how many people are on I guess like the service team and the planning team that's doing this prep work?
So, from a service aspect, that's really just agenda prep and performance reports being uploaded. So, that's really just one, maybe
Okay.
two people. And that doesn't take very much time. The
Okay.
planning team, it's really right now one person who does it, but I know as we grow, um, we will need more people to do it. Yeah.
Okay. Because I guess I'm just trying to visualize like how many of the client households on the wealth side are, I guess, like are at the private wealth level to do this. Because just you then immediately multiply by 4 for 4 meetings a year. I'm just like, it's just a lot of meetings ongoing. I mean, it's great because it's a lot of client touch points, but that's a lot of just repeated meeting prep, plan prep work for whoever's centrally supporting these.
Yes, really good point. It is, so private wealth. We have enough right now that it's sustainable. It is also for eWealth. Granted, those are twice a year meetings, so it's not
Okay.
like it's happening every quarter. Um, but I mean, as a total, yeah, that becomes a lot of clients, and right now it's okay. It's pretty manageable. But going down the road, I can see us changing the tiers, and I think we're going to have to do that sooner than later, where private wealth needs to have a higher minimum than it has right now. Just because, like you said, that's a lot. It's a lot of work. It's very thorough, and it's great planning, but it's a lot of work. So we need to be very aware of that, and how we support that, our team members as well.
And you said in the middle there of who gets what support from the centralized prep teams, that it depends on size of the client, but it sounded like it's a different system. It's not just whether you're private wealth versus e-wealth, you had to be a double A client, which was an assets minimum. So how, like, what are those, I guess, like tiers or thresholds? How does that work?
Yeah, so the A level, and we try to keep that like secondary because I don't like talking about AUM. I don't want to focus on AUM. I don't want to just try to grab
You
assets all the time. It's
you
planning.
just want to focus on planning tier because we know we've got a minimum to support the planning tier. So
Yeah, and that being
not just
said,
on that.
we do need both though. In our CRM, we have both because
Okay.
if there is a AAA client, so someone with call it more than 1.3 million, something like
Okay.
that, and they don't want to do planning, we still want them to have client experiences. We want to invite them to our events. We want them to be part of our webinars, you name it. So we have the A categories for purpose of client experience.
Okay. And
So
I guess
yeah,
particularly client experience for clients who might be more investment only, less planning oriented. So they're not getting the planning depth, but we really want to make sure we're getting the touch points.
yeah, that's exactly it. So the planning side,
Okay.
when I say it has to be double A or up, you could interchange that. It's e-wealth and private wealth. The meeting prep team will take over.
Okay.
Either it's kind of same thing.
And and so how do you manage to, it's just the like the cadence of meetings that need to get set. I'm also visualizing there's just a lot of meeting scheduling that has to happen. So, and like we've got a meeting schedule and then prep and then we do a meeting and then there's post meeting close and then we're already in the scheduling the next meeting and like we just, you continue the cycle. So how do meetings get set up or how do you like maintain the meeting prep queue?
Yeah, there are advisors that are really good, and gosh, I wish I could be. They schedule the next meeting when they're with the client, which
Okay.
is
I like my dentist.
amazing.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Again, other industries do it. Why can't we? He's
Uh-huh.
really good about doing that. I am not so good at that. I always forget to ask. I'm kind of 50-50 at this point. I'm getting better, but that does help our service team a bit that now they don't have to worry about booking that next one. So if we're talking about me, they're going to have to book it. We use the CRM for that. There are tasks that go out at the right frequency. The client usually we like to be email focused with the scheduling link so that way they can click it, they can book it, they could do it at midnight for all we care. We don't have to be on the phone with them to book it. So
Okay.
it is somewhat automated, but we do have someone manually reaching out when the time comes.
And is there like scheduling software you use? Like how do you actually manage the calendaring of it?
Yeah, right now, HubSpot, which is our CRM currently,
Okay.
has a scheduling meetings feature. So it actually
Okay.
syncs up with the CRM, and the client can choose if they want in person or virtual and the length of time that they want also.
And and so just curious then, so what led you to HubSpot? I do not hear HubSpot as often as a advisor CRM. I mean, very, very well known for being an email marketing system that added CRM and other capabilities over time. But for like any industry that does marketing, they're not particularly verticalized into advisors. So how did you end up in the HubSpot world?
So when a couple years ago we all became one team, one firm, we centralized our service team, which was very different from before. It used to be there'd be service people in every office servicing just an advisor, two or three. They were all one team. So in order to make that work, we found that a ticketing system would be needed. So that way, advisors could submit service requests through a ticket, and then it would get plugged into the CRM. It can be worked on. You can check up on it and see where things are at. We vetted some other systems. HubSpot was what we went with. I think we liked the open architecture of it, and that is why you don't hear much about it in our industry. And that we could make it our own for our very unique setup.
Interesting. And so if I'm understanding like ticketing system, like sort of the workflow aspect of managing tickets in for all the requests because you have multiple advisors in multiple locations and going forward it's a centralized service team, not, you've got your person in your office and she has her person in her office. That was the drive to new CRM and HubSpot in particular. Like it's ticketing to manage service requests to centralized support teams.
Yes. And then the other benefits that it is a CRM. There's the scheduling, like I talked about. There are playbooks so that the teams can pull up, like, what do I do next? What comes next. They can use that. So it's like training
What do you
opportunities.
Playbooks for what? Like, just can you give me an example of like what a
Yeah.
playbook would be?
The processes. So whether it's a service related new
Okay.
account opening type of process or the planning process, really anything that needs a start to finish multi-step user guide, that's where a
Okay.
playbook comes in. And it's really meant for on the service side of things. Each contact record can have its own playbook so that you can take notes in it and really keep tabs on where things are at, especially when there are perhaps several steps involved.
Okay. So I should think of these like processes and procedures manual kind of thing for for what playbooks are.
Yep.
And am I to infer if you're running off of a ticketing system into these service teams that then the whole nature of it is the team fields tickets as they come in, like we're not assigning specific support team members to specific advisors, thus why we need like a ticketing system with queuing. Is it working that way?
It if I can be real, it's really the same people doing the same tasks. One person opening accounts, one person handling this, that,
Okay.
the other. I think realistically it happened that way because training everyone to be well versed on every single service item was not going to be a
Okay.
good use of time. But where it comes in is if someone's gone, we really, have a very flexible like as long as everyone's getting their job done, there's no set vacation days. You take time when you
Right.
need it. The service team can pick up the slack when they're not there. The
But that's
playbook
an
comes in handy
interesting
then if they're not really sure what to do.
but that's an interesting structure. So as opposed to, I mean, I see a lot of advisory firms, Bob has his associate, Sheila has her associate, Bob, puts in any request for Bob's clients to Bob's associate, Sheila puts in any request for Sheila's clients to Sheila's associate. Uh, and then each of them has to know how to do all the things for that client base. It sounds like you're more functionally divided. Like, okay, someone is lead on opening accounts. And so whether Bob or Sheila or any other advisor in the office needs to open accounts, like it goes to the person who just knows the account opening systems cold and executes that repeatedly, really efficiently. And then someone else owns other parts of the internal system, the process, I don't know, cash in, cash out, meeting agenda prep, and so forth. So you've got like specialized roles in the team, not necessarily each advisor has their person that does all the things for that advisor and their client base.
That's right. And
Okay.
each of those service team members came from that world. So that was something to learn. But has been really great because part of what was considered in each of their roles is first of all, what do you like doing? What do you want to do more of? What are you good at? And so now it can be that people are in the right seats doing what they do best instead of trying to be a jack of all trades. And that really goes for the entire firm, but from a service team standpoint, especially, they can just thrive in what they want to be doing.
And so, thus, in particular, now I'm kind of connecting to that. So, thus, in particular, the ticketing system, because you really need a way to queue and track and manage. Like, okay, the account opening person has requests from 4 different advisors this week who each have some new clients in motion. And you can't just have every advisor saying, like, where's my client? Where's my thing for my clients? Associate person that works with me, because they don't work with just you. Like, they do all the account openings for all the advisors. So we need a way to manage the flow and the status and like the of where things are in the process and like who's in what sequence in the queue, which is what ticketing systems are built to do.
As well as reduce our not in good order submissions. So the
Mm-hmm.
ticketing system has put a backstop on you can't even submit the ticket unless the thorough data is in there, which is more work for the advisor, but it's in the long run, it's less work
Okay.
for everybody because now they have complete information to fulfill the request.
Oh, so you just made like the tickets all have required fields and you literally can't submit the ticket
Yeah.
until you fill out the required fields, like one of those.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Uh-huh. Well, yeah, that'll cut down incomplete apps and NIGOs.
Yep. Yep.
So now take us back and help us understand the new planning process, because we've talked a lot about the service calendar and then the support team structure around what you do for ongoing clients. How does it work for new clients or prospective clients? I mean, you said at the beginning it starts with a fit meeting, but Like what happens from there if we go through the fit meeting and I say like, Erika, this sounds awesome. I think we're a good fit. I want to move forward as a private wealth client. Like, sign me up. Let's go. What actually happens next? Like, what's the process?
It's a ticket. It's always a ticket. So
Awesome.
you submit the ticket for the type of planning you're doing. Basically, give a rundown of here's where this is at, and the team takes it away, which is
so,
just so beautiful.
so what do you mean by the ticket for the type of planning you're doing? Like, what are my choices
That would
here?
be like the foundational e-wealth, private wealth.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. So,
So,
yep.
okay. So then what happens next as this queues up?
So onboarding begins, and there is a very detailed playbook that says each step of the way, getting them set up in the planning portal, uploading the documents with the checklists on them, sending this email that has a template in the CRM to say, we're so excited to work with you. Here are the different things you can expect from us. Just lots of communication.
So
Sending
is that like an email? Like, what are you sending for this whole let's get oriented expectations that you just said?
That's an email. And then they also get an invitation to eMoney.
Okay.
Yep. And then there's instructions. We have our own little welcome kit that we put in their vault that's got the checklist, the document checklist, and some compliance documents for them to review, like our privacy policy, Form CRS, things like that. And then they need to do their homework, which, as you know, can be a bottleneck. So always looking for ways to improve that. But I credit you with the Get Organized meeting. We did implement that for those that are maybe not getting us their things as quickly
Ooh. All
as
right.
we would like.
So how does that work for you? What does that get organized meeting look like?
That is basically just needing to meet with them again to say, okay, we need your stuff. Um, or having them come into the office with their big bag of disorganized statements and things, so we can get them organized and
And just
make
say,
this
all right,
enjoyable.
bring in your big messy box. We'll sort through it with you, and scan all the things that we need along the way while you're here in the office, and
Yes.
you'll go home with your stuff organized, and we'll get the stuff that we need so that you don't have to actually figure it out yourself if you're struggling
Yes.
with it.
Yep. While we have you here, we'll just walk through all of this. So we do that if that is necessitated, and then from there, if they've gotten us, like it's a particularly motivated client, awesome, they get us all their things, and from there we have a discovery meeting for our private wealth clients.
Okay.
So that's a good 90 minutes of really doing a deep dive. We have all the quantitative stuff. Now it's the qualitative. We're going to ask them how
Because
did,
you're
go ahead.
ideally they're pulling all the quantitative stuff into e-money by linking up accounts and entering data there themselves.
Yep, uploading statements. We do have our own workbook for the things that eMoney doesn't ask, that they can
What
fill in.
what do you cover in the workbook?
It's going to be names, date of birth, kids, kind of a financial snapshot. So we do ask about things that they're going to be uploading, but it kind of gives us a roadmap of, hey, they said they had this policy and we don't see a statement for it. So kind of lets us double check things like that. Um, but yeah, it's a broad fact finder, I would say. There are tax
Okay.
questions on it. There's a budget on it. It's kind of getting a lay of the land of their financial snapshot.
Okay. So you really try to cover the financial portion in call like self onboarding, as it were, like plugging things into e-money, loading them up into the vault so that by the time you get to the discovery meeting, you're talking about the non-financial stuff.
Right. Yep. And we actually try to be pretty strict about that we do not move on to the discovery meeting until we have all the documents, because as you know, incomplete data becomes really hard to do anything
Mhm.
with. So we try to, again, that's the whole systematized part, is one thing and then the next, just to make it work.
So so in practice, what are you covering in the discovery meeting? What kinds of questions are you asking or things are you digging into?
It's about their family. It's about how they met. It's about their occupations. What do they like about their job? It's really like we call it going below the waterline. We want to know the stuff like, if you did not have to earn any money to live, what would you be doing? Or if you knew you had a year to live, how would you spend it? To really get at the core of, we're not just here to manage your money or your assets and get great rates of return, or even get you to retirement. It's learning more about how they function and what will retirement look like, and what do you think about money, and what's been a really hard lesson that you've had in the past. What did you learn about money growing up? And honestly, it's clients' favorite meeting. They get to talk about themselves for 90 minutes. Sometimes there are tears involved. It's just a really powerful meeting to get to know them on a very deep level.
Is it a standard list of questions that you go through? Like, is there a playbook for what you cover in this meeting, or is it more, I don't know, advisor, subjective advisor style about what they cover?
Well, if you know advisors like I do, they're ones who are going to do their own thing no matter what. But there is definitely a notes sheet with sample questions. So it's not meant that you throw all
Okay.
of them at them, but just see where the conversation goes and ask as things are appropriate. But yeah, we call it a discovery meeting notes document.
Out of curiosity, is that something you'd be willing to share? Like, I'm always fascinated to see the questions that people like to bring into discovery meetings.
Yeah, and when we add new advisors, they come with their own questions that they love to
Uh-huh.
ask, and I love incorporating that. I just,
Uh-huh.
the more minds the better, that we can just have a really cool client relationship and ask things that, yeah, like sharing of the minds. Let's make it better.
Awesome. Well, so I guess in that context, so if folks want to check out the discovery meeting notes document question sample questions, this is episode 415. So if you go to kitsis.com/415 for episode 415, we'll have a link in the meeting notes area to check out the documents and get some fresh ideas on interesting new questions to ask in discovery meetings. So this is a 90-minute meeting for you to get through discovery questions. So what comes next in the process?
So after that, it's all on us because theoretically we have everything we need. Our team goes to work. So that is where the ticket moves over to the planning team and they start to build the plan. And it can be a process. We give it a couple weeks, but they're going to synthesize all the data. They're going to collaborate with the advisor and say, hey, here's what we see. But I will say, usually that planning team member is in the discovery meeting, if not also the fit meeting, because we like to convey we are a whole team working on your behalf. You don't just get one person. Um,
Okay.
Everybody here is working on your behalf. We are all invested in our clients. So that person hopefully was in the discovery, so it makes it a lot easier to also build a plan when you know exactly what they're trying to accomplish.
I was going to ask, just the challenge for a lot of firms with more centralized planning teams is the difficulty of building a plan when you weren't in the discovery meeting with the client to hear the details and nuances of the goals. So it sounds like you try to have the planning team member sitting, I guess, like second chair, as it were, in the discovery meeting so that they can actually capture some of the notes and details themselves to know what the context is for the plan.
Yeah, and a lot of times they'll even zoom in. Even if the advisor is with the client in person, we can have Zoom up. We have a very comfortable meeting space. There's no conference room tables or anything. It's just like a living room space, and we have a TV on the wall where we can zoom them in, so they can kind of be a fly on the wall, but also interact with
Okay.
the clients.
Okay. Because your centralized planning team is central and you have 6 office locations. So
Correct.
sometimes people just literally aren't physically where the client is.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm curious, just because I'm going to guess there's some kind of process around it, given the ticketing workflow nature of the system. Like, how do you do the back and forth between the planning team and the advisor when you're trying to build when the advisor is not building their own plan, it's happening from centralized planning, but the advisor's got to like know it and put their touch on it and actually deliver it to the client. Like, how does that back and forth work?
So there's also a template for our fit meeting. So there's extensive notes there that the planning team can reference to see what was discussed at the fit meeting, what was discussed at the discovery if they weren't there. As they're building the plan, there is back and forth in the CRM within the ticket. There's a notes section, so you can tag someone and ask questions. But before the personal financial organizer, which is a combination of the financial plan and a bunch of other documents that we use, before that's finalized, there is a meeting with the advisor and the planning team to just solidify recommendations, talk about whatever might need to be talked about for that client's plan before we're all ready to deliver the plan.
Okay. So I'm just going to try and make sure I understand the workflow. So the planning team sits in the discovery meeting. They take all this out. They make the whole plan. They have one meeting with the advisor to say, like, here's the plan as we're planning to, like, as we built it for you to deliver, please look over it. And if there's things you want to change or add, like now is your chance.
Yep, exactly. And sometimes it's more than that, just one time. But and if there's a business owner involved, if that's who's doing the financial planning and we're doing exit planning for their business, that's like kind of a add-on that has its own process happening simultaneously.
Sure.
So it can get complicated, and more meetings are required. But for the most part, there is a lot of collaboration happening behind the scenes.
I guess I'm just trying to visualize like how much back and forth does it take for your centralized planning team to build plans for the advisors who are out with the clients?
If everything is happening according to plan and we have complete documents, I don't see why it's more than once, just to say, hey, we have everything good to go. Um, how does this look? And then the advisor might share some thoughts they have, and then it gets uploaded and the ticket is moved forward.
Okay. So what happens after doing all the internal plan building?
Yeah. So once I'm going to reference it again, personal financial organizer is what it's called. Once that's
Okay.
uploaded to their vault, and sometimes printed into paper. I know it sounds old school, but somehow there are clients that even if it's a couple, one of them always wants the paper book. We will print it at our office and put it in a nice leather binder. But yeah, it gets uploaded and then the scheduling team takes over to book the plan delivery meeting with the client. And we have the meeting. And a lot of times the planner will be there too, because advisors have different comfort level with the technology, specific to us, e-money. So the planning team knows it very well, and they can be there to be working behind the scenes, showing the plan if the advisor's not totally confident in how to use the software.
Okay. So like the planning team may steer the software, may steer e-money so that the advisor can just air quotes, like just focus on talking to the client, delivering plan and recommendations.
Yep.
And so this personal financial organizer, like, is that the plan? Like, is that the financial plan, or is this something else or more or separate or in addition? I'm trying to visualize what that is.
Yeah, it is. So it's got like a cover page with our logo and everything on it. It's got tabs. So there are e-money reports, put into their various tabs depending on the categories they go in. But we also add some of our own things like a financial ratios template. We'll put in their monthly cash flow budget. As an Excel spreadsheet instead of what eMoney has. So there's things that we looked at all of the reports eMoney has, and then we've supplemented with our own documents. A tax summary. Here's what you paid in taxes last year. Here's your tax rate, things like that. But the thing I'm most excited about in the PFO is the household resources tab. And I got this inspiration from Pinterest because I love Pinterest. And it's basically, if something happens to me, the client, I want my whoever beneficiaries to know exactly where everything is and what's going on. And it's not that all the documents are in this PFO, but it's a roadmap to where to find them. So it's, here's where our safe deposit box is. Here's where my passwords are located. Here's what I've considered for my final, whatever the case. That's the estate organizer. Here's where my property is. Here's basically all the things that when we've had clients unfortunately pass away, those things that the people left behind don't even know where to begin. They have a mess on their hands. It's disorganized. This is meant to be filled out once and then kept in the book for the client, for their beneficiaries.
Okay. So kind of financial plan, but more stuff you've added into the I guess the template, the overall deliverable that you give to them.
Yep, exactly.
And it's still physical for you. Like it's a printout, deliver to them kind of thing, not only an electronic, like let's do it on the big screen together.
Right. It's both. So there is always a PDF version of it that goes into their
Okay.
vault. But the people who want the actual binder, we'll print that out for them too. And this is private wealth only, where we don't actually do the binder for eWealth.
And out of curiosity, just why still the binder? I don't want to make that sound negative, but like I feel like a lot of firms seem to be moving to we're just in a more digital world. We're doing all this electronically. So why the printed physical deliverable?
Right now, it's only because the client wants the actual binder. There are people that just like to be able to feel and touch and page through and make notes on. And if that's their preference, then we do that for them. I was surprised by how many people want, even today, still like that. But
So
again,
you
there's
give
always
them,
someone.
you actually like ask them and just give them a choice. Do you want us to print this out for you, or should we just give you an electronic version?
Yeah, we do ask them. Yep.
And so how many say, I don't know, like what percentage say, yes, printed, I still want the physical deliverable?
It's so there tends to be a generational divide. I'll say the younger clients now don't really want the paper. But a lot of times it does seem like the person who may be less interested in their personal finances or investing, or maybe is just less savvy, they like the paper. There's something like a security
Hmm,
about it that they can just pull it off the shelf at their house and see everything. Um, so that's why I'm not too quick to just draw a line in the
interesting.
sand and say it's electronic, because there are those people that just feel like, hey, if mom and dad are both gone, kids, here's where you go. And it's right here on the shelf. And they like that.
Right. And so then what happens after plan delivery?
Implementation. So we
Is that a separate
prioritize it.
meeting for you?
No, no.
Okay.
So the plan delivery, there can be a lot to it. And sometimes you have to have a follow up because there's just too much, which is okay. So that's where we prioritize. Like we really need to get the accounts moved over, or you really need to get in underwriting for insurance, or whatever the imminent need is. We'll run with that. And sometimes, actually, a lot of times, it'll be simultaneous. We'll submit tickets for all the things the client needs, and that is the beauty of the tickets as well, is now there can be many balls in the air and different teams are handling it, and you can see where everything is at and kind of just oversee that part of the process.
And what determines whether you have to split the plan meeting into two? I mean, is there a scope? Is there a threshold? Is it just kind of play it by ear based on client circumstances?
Yeah, how long the delivery is getting. If it's a very complicated situation and there's a lot of moving parts, it's going to have to be multiple meetings just because people's attention spans aren't that long and it just gets too long. So we'd break it up at that point, especially those exit plans. Those are multiple meetings with many
Right.
people. So it just depends on the situation.
Is there a target for how long you want to let that meeting be before it's getting too long?
Yeah, I mean, Zoom is one thing. When it's in person, it can go an hour and a half. I don't like to do it longer than that. You can just tell people they're getting tired. We need
Yeah.
to move on with our day. we'll
Uh-huh.
we'll we'll pick this back up in a week. And that's okay. That's
Right.
the process can withstand those kinds of diversions.
And so all of this for your firm is driven by ticketing system that just, I guess, queues up new tickets, next ticket as it goes through. I mean, it sounds like it's not just a ticketing request system. It feels like it's like a workflow system that generates ticketing tasks. Is that a fair characterization?
It is. So the tickets themselves are not automated. It does have to be submitted by a live person. Um, but that makes sense. Like if you need to open a new account, then we submit a ticket for it.
Right.
The planning process itself, that workflow, that is following the order of operations. So it might be on the stage of, well, actually, I should say there is not a stage of plan implementation. It goes right from the delivery to the welcome stage because tickets are handling all the implementation. The planning process ticket itself doesn't need to wait for that. So then we begin the welcoming where we send them a letter and a gift and close it out. And then the rest of the tickets are taking over.
Wait. So help me understand. So I get to the end of plan delivery. Now I'm getting a welcome email. Like, have we been working together for a few meetings already?
Yeah, yeah. So the letter is more like, we're just really glad you've chosen to work with us. here's a token of our appreciation for being able to work together. We'll send for our private wealth clients a personalized cutting board with their monogram on it. And that takes some time to order and get all assembled. But the letter is such that it makes sense. It doesn't feel odd. It's worded like, we've really enjoyed working with you and we look forward to working with you for many years to come.
Okay. And so this is like a celebratory, we got through the planning process.
Yeah, yep. And a token of our appreciation.
And so you give them a monogrammed cutting board as appreciation for like doing financial planning with you, going through the planning process with you.
Yeah, and being a client of our firm. So we put a lot of emphasis on client experience. We have people that's what they're thinking about, is how to have a really unique experience. And this was part of it, that we wanted to systematize and make sure every client feels like that white glove service. Yeah.
So out of curiosity, what else is in the interesting client experiences bucket?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've built in kind of the things you can't schedule. Like, if you think of your client when you read this article, send it to them. And then just checking in on their lives. And we also do send a holiday gift at the end of the year. For a while, we'd send Thanksgiving cards because that seemed unusual to get a card for Thanksgiving, but also a way to show our gratitude. And then client events too are built in, and webinars. So kind of the various client touches on a scheduled basis, so they can hear from us, and it's not
So
always in a meeting.
so what is a holiday gift for you? What do you do for holiday gifts?
One of my favorite ones was a wrapping paper set. Just because who doesn't need wrapping paper? It really doesn't matter what you celebrate. Yeah, so we sent that, and that was very cost effective too. It came with bows and ribbon. That was really nice. I know that we did a cocktail kit once. That was around the pandemic time, kind of like a craft cocktail. It had like dried oranges with it, and it was really, really cool. Um, I think we've done a spice kit was last year, I want to say. So we try to do things that are creative and thoughtful, and not your run of the mill like template card.
Is there a budget you set for these? Like it's not inexpensive, particularly if you're doing these, then you got like hundreds of clients that you need to send them out to.
Right. So that's built into that very complex spreadsheet
Okay.
about figuring out hourly rates and things like that. We did plug in budgets for the client experience pieces of it too.
So so then what kinds of client events are you doing?
So we've done, actually it's really varied depending on the office. I know that our Iowa office on the river there had a river cruise once. We here in Minneapolis got a suite at the Twins game, which was really fun. We also have a really great office space here where there's a patio and you can actually see downtown Minneapolis. And we've had events there. Just, it's part of our rent here. So that's a cost effective way in a really cool space, to get catered and have activities.
So
And yeah,
so how many of these are you doing through the year?
we have not done one this year so far.
Okay.
But the, you know, it's kind of personal preference. I'm not like the most extroverted person in the world, so I'm not itching to do them, but I know there's clients who really like them. So for me, it feels kind of like I got to
Okay.
force myself. But I would say quarterly, not more than quarterly. It may be a couple times a year, and maybe you have like that anchor event that's maybe the bigger one once a year for the top clients.
But it sounds like this is more advisor by advisor. You can do a thing for your segment of clients. It's not necessarily like the firm is doing a firm-wide event and all clients are invited or expected to engage in this firm-wide client event.
It's regionally firm wide. So
Okay.
never is it like my quote unquote my clients. It's all of our clients. So in Minnesota, all of the advisors here, we would have an event for our collective relationships, and they're all clients of
Okay.
the firm. So same with our other locations too. It's never a one
Okay.
person doing it.
And then what do you do for webinars to supplement all of this?
Yeah, we recently started combining. We have a really great education program for our retirement plan participants. And we were already doing webinars for them. So we thought, why not add on the private client side? Because everyone has the same financial questions and, different interests in different matters. So we have now been combining them. So they are available to our plan participants and our private clients, and they're quarterly and if not every other month. But it's always a different topic that's timely. And we usually have an expert on with us to interview.
And can you give me some examples of what kind of topics you've covered that you find are relevant?
Yeah, we just did one on tax. That is to talk about changes coming up here with state tax law and things that clients can expect, how that might impact them. That was with a CPA firm associate that we have a connection to. So that was great. We've done ones that are geared towards our clients' kids. So financial literacy, money matters. Here's why you should save. Here's what a Roth
Okay.
is. We've kind of run the gamut of who the audience is. We had someone from the Social Security Administration come on to explain Social Security. So that was probably for the older crowd, but yeah, we try
Yep.
to get a wide audience.
Okay. So who's responsible for them internally? Like how does this get done within the firm?
Yeah, we have a team member who he's got his whole podcast set up and his mic and the studio. So he tends to run those. But we also have people from all over in our different offices who will maybe join him and be part of it and help organize it. So it kind of depends. We've had multiple team members throughout the different webinars.
And these aren't necessarily for prospects. This is specifically for existing clients to engage them.
Right. So that same podcast extraordinaire. So he will be looking more towards the prospective clients and advisors side of things with his expertise. So that's to come. But yeah, for now, it's for our existing clients.
So as you look back on this journey and evolution, what surprised you the most about building the advisory business?
I would say that I could find an aspect of this career that I never would have seen before had we not kind of completely had that aha moment that there's a different way we could be working with clients. Um, and so that's been really fun just for me personally. But on the client side, I would say I was, and I continue to maybe less so now, but surprised that there are clients out there who are loving what we're doing. And it doesn't have to be scary to rethink how we're hired for our advice. We're not in the business of selling people things. That was kind of the mentality I was brought up with. And it just never really felt right to me. And so I was surprised that I could work with a client in a different way and they'd be receptive to it and have had success with it. So that's been great.
So help me understand more of what the aha moment was. Like what happened, what changed, what were you doing that suddenly was different?
Yeah, I was at our broker dealer that our family had been a part of for 3 generations, and went to an industry event and went to a particular breakout session that pretty much spoke to all of the frustrations I had in this career. Clients not taking advice, clients leaving because the performance wasn't there, um, feeling like I had to sell to make them a client, meetings being difficult at times. There are just all these things that weren't completely in sync with who I am. And she really spoke to all of it and was saying, we need to reimagine our business. We need to think of it as we provide advice for a fee, and that's okay. And clients hire you to work with you, and you're not everything to everyone, and nor should you be. You should be very convicted in what you have to offer, and that it's great, and that if they want to work with you, great. And if it's not a good fit for them, then you move on, and it's not a failure. So that was my
Be,
light bulb. That felt good.
be, because you came up in a brokerage environment where was the opposite. Like we implement products for clients. You're supposed to work with anybody who comes to you so that you can find some opportunity of whatever it is they need and provide it for them. So the idea of we can provide advice for a fee and just work with the people that are a good fit, like that's why it was a change. That's why it was a distinction for you, because that wasn't the the brokerage environment you grew up in?
That's exactly right. It spoke to me so much that I want to just be really good at what I'm good at, and I want to be able to provide it to the right people. And a sales model was not that for me. It was fine in that I learned a lot about products, so there's that benefit. But other than that, even just being compensated in a way that rewards sales, that wasn't really ultimately what I wanted to be doing.
So what was the low point on this journey for you?
Yeah, I guess realizing in that brokerage environment that they said that we could charge fees and provide advice and all that good stuff, but at the end of the day, there was a lot of barriers as to how we could convey our fees in a transparent way that I found problematic. So leaving was exciting, but again, had that whole family history. So that was scary. I worked very closely I still do, with my dad, and he was all about it. So I guess kudos to him that he was well into his decades and decades into his career and willing to make the change. Um, I would say the second phase of that, so coming to this firm that shared the same values and how they work with clients, and that was in such alignment, we became partners with the RIA, that was growing. So there's growing pains as you're growing. One of them being our office was brand new. So we were even just ordering desks and furniture just so we had a place to sit.
Yeah.
And we learned very quickly that we were a really great team. Actually, it was six of us from the brokerage firm. And we love working together, work really well together. That's all great. But we really did not have good business development. So being expected to grow at a rate that there really weren't a lot of people that were developing business. We were really good at process and a client experience, no problem. And other offices who had their own balance sheets to deal with were great at business development, but not so much at process, and somewhere in between. So that was difficult, trying to recruit to that and just feel like, okay, how are they doing it? And trying to find a very specific person for a very specific role in our location. So it was really good, challenging to change and become one, but really good for everyone because now everyone's working to their own strengths and we're all better together instead of separately.
And what kicked off this journey again? Like you said, like you were charging fees in the brokerage environment, but couldn't really charge them the way you wanted. Like what was the blocking point, or like the I don't know, the moment of no return
Yeah.
trigger for you?
I mean, other than broker dealers are a little clunky, I've learned now that I'm in the RIA world. So even just getting a website approved took probably more than 6 months, which felt crazy to me. And then they were just rolling out fee-based planning and loved it. I spoke to a whole group of advisors on it because I was so bought into it. And I told them I want to be able to tell clients that their assets under management can offset their planning fees because I don't like that's how I'd like to charge. And they're like, yep,
Yeah.
that's great, but you can't tell them that. I was like, well, that's what we're doing though. Now I can't be as transparent about the fees. Um,
They
or
were
call it
fine that you did a fee offset, but you couldn't market that you did a fee offset?
correct. They really wanted to keep those two things separate, the advisory business and the fee-based planning business. They wanted this big wall in between. And I found that hard to overcome. And also, I was
Mhm.
seeing that there were so many things you can do for clients without those restrictions in place. And I'm not saying non-compliant things, but even simply
Yeah.
like having a CPA on staff or whatever we can dream of that a company could become, we have total autonomy where we are now. So that felt good too, as we can grow how we want with the people we want without constantly being told no.
I like that. We can grow how we want with the people we want. So what else would you go back and tell you from like 10 to 15 years ago as you were going down this road and like crafting the path for yourself?
I kind of laugh at my beginnings. My dad, huge role model in my career. I kind of thought, and I still to a point think this way, that to be successful, I have to be like him because he is. And we have different personalities. So I remember in the early days of being an advisor, and I just watch him in meetings, and clients love him. And he'd be talking about whatever happened at the football game last night. And I I am a former athlete. I like sports, but I don't know a lot about the sports that these clients seem to just love talking about. So I forced myself to learn what was happening in the sports world because I thought that was what it was going to take to be an effective advisor. So anyway, yeah, success does not depend on a certain personality type. I've learned you can be yourself, and there will be clients that appreciate it.
So you eventually let go of the sports tracking.
Got rid of Yeah, and I also learned that us working as a team was also a huge benefit because he is more of the, high level. He's really great at talking with people. He really understands life insurance, but on the other hand, I am very detailed, very meticulous, very type A. And those two things actually, even though it can drive me crazy working with a personality like his, it's very complementary. So I can build the plan, I can deliver the plan, I can make sure everything happens that needs to happen, and he can go out and just make great relationships. So that worked out really well, and was a lesson in that we all have different strengths and we can leverage them and have really good outcomes for clients.
And how long was that frustrating before you got to that moment of zen?
Uh, I will say he is now firmly on the insurance team, and I am on the private wealth team.
Okay.
So he does what he does best, and we're not trying to force him to sit down with a private wealth client and deliver a financial plan because it's not his wheelhouse. And that's the beauty of it, is
Yeah.
just focus on what he loves.
So any other advice you would give younger, newer planners like coming into the profession today and trying to carve their own path?
Yeah, and I go back to that personality thing. I don't know that I ever would have been hired, just me, myself. And maybe that's not giving myself enough credit, but I'm not out there networking. I don't like prospecting. I don't like any of that. So I guess my best advice is finding what part of the profession speaks to you and fully embrace it. If you're really great at the thing you're great at, then continue to get better at it and become an expert and work to those strengths. I think it just makes for a more enjoyable career, more fulfilling, and still room to grow. I love books and podcasts, and I always want to be learning more. But I think focusing really helps with that, and finding a really supportive environment for that. A team approach, now that I've seen kind of all the worlds, it's such a huge benefit.
So as we wrap up, this is a podcast about success, and just one of the themes that comes up is the word success means very different things to different people. And so you're on this wonderfully successful path with the business as everybody has merged together, and now the enterprise is growing as a consolidated team, and you're crossing this like monster $3 billion assets under management as a firm. So it seems the business is in a wonderful place now. How do you define success for yourself at this point?
Yeah, and my role has taken on such that I'm not always with clients. It's about half my time, but I still think about I got into this to help people. So even to this day, if I've done a good enough job, and the whole team, frankly, if we've all done a good enough job that they refer us, especially without asking, I feel like there's no greater success when it comes to what we do. That's just a job well done, enough that they spoke to someone they cared about, knowing that they could benefit. So I still love that. I've loved that since the beginning. And it's a big confidence boost. So that's great. I would say on the more executive side of things, I love problem solving with the team. If there's a challenge with their role, or something's frustrating or not working right, I love figuring it out, putting them in the right spot, and seeing them thrive. We've had examples of that, and everybody wins in that. When you have people that are happy to
Yep.
be working somewhere, the clients win too, and people stick around. So that's another measure. And I would say the final one that is one of the best parts of the business is just the flexibility. Um, I'm a mom. I have 3 kids. I have a husband, and there's nothing stopping me from being part of their lives as much as I can, volunteering, going on field trips. And I don't know how I could be so invested in a career without that kind of flexibility that I can show up as the mom I want to be. So that might be, to me, the most important ingredient of all.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Erika, for joining us on the Financial Advisor Success Podcast.
Thanks. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Want even more ideas, tools, and resources on how to break through to the next level of success as a financial advisor? Check out the leading financial planning industry blog, Nerd's Eye View, at www.kitsis.com, where Michael covers the latest practice management trends and financial planning strategies. And by joining the members section, you can earn IMCA and CFP continuing education credits, along with exclusive member content. Get it all now at www.kitsis.com.